The silence is the worst part. It's been 72 hours, and the silence is a physical presence in my apartment. His side of the bathroom cabinet is still slightly ajar, and every time I walk past, I swear I can smell the ghost of his cedarwood aftershave. It's a punch to the gut, every single time. His favorite coffee mug, the heavy ceramic one with a chip on the rim he refused to throw away, is gone from the drying rack. His side of the closet is just a collection of naked, clattering plastic hangers. My brain is running on a loop, replaying that final conversation, trying to find a loophole, a different path we could have taken. But there isn't one. It feels like watching a car crash in slow motion, except I'm the one who greased the brakes. How did this happen? How does a stupid, pathetic test I concocted in my own paranoid head turn into this? This hollowed out space that echoes with every step I take. 3 days ago, I thought I was in control. I was the one pulling the strings, orchestrating a little drama to soothe an old wound that had nothing to do with him. Now the only thing I'm in control of is the volume on the TV I keep on for noise. He didn't just leave, he was surgically removed from my life, and I was the one holding the scalpel. Someone please tell me how this happened, because my own brain isn't giving me any answers except the one I can't stand to hear. You did this to yourself. Before the silence, there was Evan. Evan was solid. He was a geological surveyor, a man who spent his days mapping the literal bedrock of the earth. His entire personality was like that, grounded, reliable, and calm. His reliability wasn't in grand gestures, but in the million tiny, consistent things he did. The way he'd text me home safe after a late shift without me ever having to ask. The time my car battery died in a grocery store parking lot during a downpour, and he showed up in 15 minutes with jumper cables and a flask of hot chocolate, not with an "I told you so," but with a simple "okay, let's get this sorted." He was a man who solved problems. He didn't create them. With Evan, the ground beneath my feet felt firm for the first time in my life. And God, did I hate it? You have to understand, my last serious boyfriend, Daniel, was a master of illusion. A charismatic con artist who majored in gaslighting with a minor in infidelity. He thrived on chaos. He'd disappear for a whole night and resurface the next morning with a wild, poetic story about a lost phone and a dead car battery, all while smelling faintly of someone else's perfume. He taught me that love was a battlefield, that you had to fight and claw for every scrap of affection, and that stability was a boring lie people told themselves. He left me with an emotional landscape of fault lines and sinkholes. So when Evan came along with his quiet confidence and unwavering consistency, my broken internal GPS couldn't compute. This couldn't be real. I felt like an imposter in a healthy relationship. Every time he did something kind, a voice in my head screamed that it was a manipulation. Every quiet, happy evening we spent watching movies on the couch felt like the before picture in a tragedy. I was just waiting for the other shoe to drop, for the mask to slip and reveal the monster underneath. Except there was no mask, he was just Evan. For our 6-month anniversary, he gave me a small, heavy gift wrapped in simple brown paper. Inside was a beautiful, old-fashioned brass compass. It felt cool and solid in my palm, the needle trembling for a second before pointing resolutely north. I looked up at him, confused. "It's for your dashboard," he said, his smile genuine and warm. "I know you get turned around in the city sometimes." He then took my hand, his thumb tracing circles on my palm. "But also, it's because it always points north. It never lies. That's what I want for us, Aurora, a true north, something we can both count on always." A part of me, the part that was so desperate for safety, melted. It was the most romantic, most Evan thing he could have possibly said. But another, colder part of me, the part Daniel had forged in fire and betrayal, recoiled. It felt like a challenge. A standard I was destined to fail. The compass in my hand felt less like a gift and more like a test. And a sick, insidious voice whispered from the back of my mind, "Real love isn't this easy. Real love is a chase. What if you made the needle spin? What if you lied just to see if he'd still follow you, to see if he'd fight for you the way you were taught love required?" That gift, that beautiful symbol of his core principle, became the very thing I would use to destroy us. The tipping point came on a perfectly normal Tuesday. We were curled up on the sofa, planning a weekend trip to a little cabin by a lake he'd found online. He was genuinely excited, showing me pictures of the hiking trails and the ridiculous-looking canoe we could rent. He was already talking about what kind of groceries we should buy. In that moment, everything was perfect. He was warm, attentive, and fully present. And that's when the cold dread washed over me. The old, familiar poison started seeping into my thoughts. This is too good, it's an act, no one is this uncomplicated. He's just saying what you want to hear because you're easy, because you don't challenge him. The thought became a terrible itch under my skin. I had to scratch it. I had to know if his foundation was as solid as it seemed. So, with the clarity of a madwoman, I decided to create an earthquake. My test was as simple as it was cruel. I would withdraw. I would become the ghost of the difficult, unpredictable women from his past he'd told me he was so glad to be done with. I told myself it was for a good reason. If he fought through the silence and the distance to reach me, if he proved he wanted me and not just the easy version of me, then I could finally silence Daniel's voice in my head forever. I could finally trust that this was real. I knew, even as the plan formed, that it was a monumentally stupid, self-destructive idea. I was a pyromaniac holding a match in a house I claimed to love just to see if the man inside would be brave enough to run in and save me. It started the next day. He texted me a link to a local band playing near the cabin. Thought you'd like this. Can't wait for Friday. I read the message. I smiled. And then I put my phone down and didn't reply for hours. The silence felt powerful. When he texted again that evening, a simple everything okay, I let that one sit too. I finally replied just before bed with a curt, yeah, just busy. The next day, I canceled the trip. I called him, my heart hammering against my ribs. Hey, I don't think I can make it this weekend. Oh, he said. The line went quiet for a second. I could hear the surprise and disappointment in that single syllable. Is everything all right? Did something happen? Here was my chance to stop, to say, I'm just being an idiot, I'm sorry. Instead, I leaned into the lie. No, nothing. I'm just not really feeling up to it. Not feeling up to it, he repeated, his voice laced with a confusion that I mistook for weakness. We've been planning this for weeks. I know. I'm just tired. We can do it another time, I said, the words feeling like ash in my mouth. For the first few days, his reaction was exactly what my sick little experiment craved. He tried harder. He left my favorite pastries on my doorstep. He sent me funny articles and memes, trying to coax a smile out of me. He was worried, and his worry was a balm on my damaged ego. See? The voice in my head crowed, he's fighting for you. This is working. I was so focused on the validation of his pursuit that I completely ignored the growing bewilderment and hurt in his eyes every time I pushed him away. I was winning a game that he didn't even know he was playing. My calculated coldness lasted exactly 8 days. On the ninth day, the frantic texts and the concerned calls just stopped. The silence from his end was sudden and absolute, and it was 100 times more terrifying than the silence I had been manufacturing. My sick little game of push and pull had been met with a complete shutdown. He wasn't pushing back anymore, he wasn't even there. Panic, cold and sharp, began to prickle at the edges of my manufactured confidence. This wasn't part of the plan. He was supposed to break down my walls, not build his own. After 2 days of that deafening silence, my phone buzzed with a message from him. It wasn't a desperate plea or an angry outburst. It was 4 simple, devastatingly calm words. Can we talk, please? We met at a neutral, sterile coffee shop downtown, a place with no memories attached. I walked in feeling a strange mix of triumph and terror. I had my speech ready, a carefully crafted narrative about feeling overwhelmed and needing space, a performance designed to let him win me back. He was already there, sitting at a small table by the window, a half-empty cup of black coffee in front of him. He didn't look angry, he didn't look sad, he just looked tired. The kind of tired that settles deep in your bones. He didn't even wait for me to sit down properly. Aurora, he started, his voice low and even completely devoid of the emotion I had been trying to provoke. I'm not going to play guessing games. You've been testing me, haven't you? The question was so direct, so devoid of accusation that it completely disarmed me. All my prepared lines, all my dramatic excuses evaporated. Staring into his clear, steady eyes, I felt a hot flush of shame. I couldn't lie, not to that face. Yes, I whispered, the word barely audible. He nodded slowly as if confirming a grim hypothesis. He looked down at his coffee cup, tracing the rim with his finger. Oh, why? I just needed to know, I stammered, the pathetic truth spilling out. I needed to know that you'd fight for me, that it was real. He finally looked up, and for the first time, I saw the full depth of his disappointment. It was 1,000 times worse than anger. Fight for you? Against what? Against you? Aurora, I thought we were partners. Partners don't lay traps for each other. They don't create problems just to see how the other person will react. I feel like a lab rat. He reached into his pocket and placed something small and metallic on the table between us. The brass compass, it gleamed dully under the fluorescent lights. I gave you this because I wanted us to have a true north, he said, his voice cracking just once. A foundation of honesty. But you used it to see if you could make me spin in circles. You don't trust me, but worse than that, you don't respect me enough to be honest. And I can't build a life on that. He stood up, his movements clean and decisive. He put a $10 bill on the table, more than enough for both our coffees. I can't be with someone who needs to burn the house down just to feel warm for a minute. That's a principle for me, Aurora. It's about respect. And then he turned and walked out of the coffee shop, leaving me sitting there with the compass pointing north, directly at the empty space where he had just been. He never looked back. The finality of that walkout was a physical blow. There was no dramatic door slam, no final angry text, just a clean, quiet exit. It was the most Evan way to end things, and it was utterly devastating. My first instinct was pure, frantic denial. This was just a bigger test, right? My test had backfired, and now he was testing me. I had to fix it. I spent the next 48 hours in a self-made digital hell. I sent a barrage of texts, each one more desperate than the last. They started as apologies, "I'm so sorry, I was an idiot," then morphed into desperate explanations. "It wasn't about you, it was about my past," and finally devolved into pathetic begging, "Please, just talk to me. We can fix this." They were all delivered, none were read. The single gray checkmark on WhatsApp became my personal tormentor. I called and it went straight to voicemail after one ring. He'd blocked me. The efficiency of it was brutal. My panic escalated. I needed an ally, a go-between. I called Jessica, our mutual friend, the one who had introduced us. I launched into a tearful, edited version of the story, painting myself as a confused, insecure girl who'd made a silly mistake. I expected sympathy, maybe an offer to talk to him on my behalf. What I got was a long, uncomfortable silence on the other end of the line. "Aurora," she finally said, and her voice was heavy with a weary sort of pity. "Oh, Aurora. What did you think was going to happen?" "I don't know," I cried, my voice cracking. "I thought he'd be mad, we'd fight, and then we'd make up. I didn't think he'd just disappear." "That's because you still don't get him," she said, and her words, though gentle, were sharp. "Evan doesn't do drama. He's the most straightforward person I know. He hates games. You know his last girlfriend cheated on him, right? For him, a deliberate lie, a manipulation, it's the same thing. It's a betrayal of trust, and for him, trust is everything. You didn't just step on his toe, you took a sledgehammer to his foundation." She sighed again. "I'm sorry, but I can't get in the middle of this. You really touched his red line on this one." Her awkward distancing was more damning than any lecture. She wasn't taking his side. She was simply stepping away from the mess I'd made, and in doing so, she confirmed I was utterly alone in it. The final, crushing blow came a few days later. He had asked me to pack up the few things he'd left at my apartment. As I was numbly folding his sweaters, smelling his scent on them one last time, my hand brushed against a loose piece of paper in the back of his desk drawer. I pulled it out. It was a crumpled printout from a travel website, a detailed itinerary for a trip to Tromsø, Norway for a week in December. It was a plan to see the northern lights. He had researched flights, bookmarked a cozy-looking glass igloo hotel, and even made a list of restaurants that served my favorite seafood. At the bottom, in his neat, practical handwriting, he had scrawled, "Surprise for Aurora's birthday, the ultimate true north." I sank to the floor, the paper clutched in my hand. This was the future I had been so afraid to believe in. A future that was real, that was planned, that was being built for me, for us. And I had taken that beautiful, tangible plan and set it on fire for a ghost. It's been a month. Or maybe a year. Time has warped into a thick, syrupy mess of regret and insomnia. My apartment is clean now. His scent has faded, replaced by the sterile smell of lemon cleaner and loneliness. I function, I go to my job as a paralegal, I stare at documents, I highlight clauses, and I come home. But I'm not really living in my life anymore. I'm living on his Instagram feed. I didn't have the strength to block him. Instead, I did something far more pathetic. I created a fake account, a ghost with a generic username and a stock photo of a sunset as its profile picture. It's my first and last stop of the day. I am a digital archaeologist digging through the ruins of what I destroyed, searching for clues he will never give me. He hasn't posted much. There are no pictures with a new girl, no dramatic declarations of newfound freedom. That would almost be easier. A clean break. Instead, his posts are quietly, devastatingly normal. There's a photo of him and his friends at a baseball game, him smiling a genuine, relaxed smile that I haven't seen in months. There's a picture of a ridiculously complicated rock formation, the caption filled with geological jargon I don't understand. He is simply moving on. His world is still turning, the bedrock is still firm beneath his feet. Then last night he posted a new photo. It was taken from the top of a mountain, the sky a brilliant, clear blue. He's not in the picture, it's just his hand held out against the horizon. and in his palm, catching the sunlight, is the brass compass, the one I left on the coffee shop table. The caption was 6 words that bypassed my brain and shot straight into my heart, twisting like a knife. Recalibrating, finding true north again. And that's when I finally understood. He wasn't just moving on, he was healing. He was resetting his own internal compass, the one I had so carelessly tried to break. He was finding his way back to the principles I had violated, back to the honesty I had mocked. His true north was a place I could no longer travel to. He had erased me from the map. And I am left here in this self-made hell, a ghost haunting the edges of his new world, forever lost, with no compass to guide me home.